All right. Good morning, everyone. Matt Braden here from GPAR. Welcome to the 2020 general membership meeting. We're so glad to have you here, and we're sure to see more people file in as the program starts going on. Before we get into the lineup that we have for you today, there's a couple of housekeeping things that I need to take care of, and we'll start off with the nominating committee. So nominating committee was put together by immediate past president Chris Summers, and he put this group together led by Heather Patrone-Shook to go ahead and put together a slate of nominated folks to be on the board of directors for 2021. Yes, we will actually flip the calendar, so they say, when that ball drops in a couple of weeks. That nominating committee did some work, and they came forth with the following slate of officers. So the line officers will be President Stephanie Biello, President-elect Jacob Markovitz, Vice President Roderick Walker, Treasurer Link Slipikoff, and then as director slots for the 2021 Board of Directors for a 3-year term, it'll be Carlos Masip. For a 2-year term, Chris Mattioli. For a 1-year term, Stephen Stiles. And for a 1-year term, Anastasia Dewan. So that is our slate for 2021. In addition to those folks that came through the nominating process, Stephanie Biello, president, has selected Janice Benstock and Jeannie Whipple to serve as presidential appointees to the board of directors. So we thank everybody for throwing your hat into the ring, going through the process. We look forward to working with all of those folks in the coming year. But it's important to go ahead and look at the current year, and we want to say thank you very much to the board of directors who helped us out with this crazy year. We are very grateful for their time, energy, experience, and knowledge, and their flexibility. They had to really kind of go with the flow with things, and there were points in times where we weren't sure what the next steps were going to be, and they were with us every single step of the way. So we thank them very much for everything that they've given to us. They do that on behalf of the industry that they care so much about, but also too, they care tremendously about you guys, our members. Remember, this is a volunteer-led organization. None of these folks are getting anything except for giving back, that sense of commitment to the industry that they care so much about. And speaking of giving back, we are currently looking for volunteers for our committees. The committee deadline the application deadline for committees is this afternoon, but President Stephanie said, hey, why don't we keep it open through Monday? So we're going to do that. We want to get those applications in. We're looking to fill all of our committees. We sent out emails. Check your inbox right now if you missed it. It should be at the bottom of that message. We would love to see as many people as possible to get involved. It's a great opportunity to learn more about your industry, find an area that's of interest to you. If you really think that professional standards is within your wheelhouse, you throw your hat in the ring for that committee. If you find that you love politics, I don't know if anyone really loves politics anymore, but if you have an interest in politics, government affairs is the place for you. So please give that a shot, consider that. Finally, speaking of committees, our Horizons Committee has put together a fundraiser this year. As we know, the pandemic has hit people in a lot of different ways, and nowhere more is that apparent than in food insecurity. We have a lot of hungry people in our area, and Phil Abundance is the main food bank, the biggest food bank that we have here in the Delaware Valley. We have a 5K going on, a virtual 5K. We're trying to raise money for Phil Abundance. I dropped it in the chat. I put the link in there. What we're doing right now is raising money for that. We think that we can pull in even more money. So we're putting out a challenge. We would like to get $500 into the till during the course of today's general membership meeting. So if a bunch of you just throw in $5, we can get to that $500 really, really fast. So please click on that link, go make a contribution. We would love to see us help out our fellow Philadelphians who are in need during this very, very trying and difficult time. So with that, let's get into the program. Something that we found this year that was a great success, and talking about just kind of running with it, and that is coffee talk. with our president, Stephanie Biello. We've done a bunch of these chats during the course of this year. They've been a wild success, due in large part to the guests that we've had, but also too for you folks tuning in when we do these things. They've been awesome. So we have a really awesome guest with us. He was here with us a couple times this year. Actually, he's on the bookends. He was at the beginning of 2020. He's on the tail end of 2020. He was in the middle of the pandemic with us. He has a new title. He is the president of NAR. That's Charlie Oppler from the great state of New Jersey. Here we go, coffee talk. Good morning, Stephanie.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is my last cup of coffee talk for the year. And I'm so glad I get to end it with our NAR president, Charlie Oppler. Like Matt said, Charlie was with us in the beginning at the inauguration, and he installed our board of directors. And wow, we did not expect 2020 to be what it is. So here we are at the end. And Charlie, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's reintroduce you to some of our GPAR members in a couple minutes. Just tell us a little bit about your business and how you came to get involved in the Realtor Association.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, President Festa. Nice to see you. And thanks for the job you did this year as well for the state of Pennsylvania. Obviously wasn't an easy year for anybody. So I know what you went through with the difficulties in the state of Pennsylvania being deemed essential. Fortunately for us in New Jersey, we were deemed essential right away and had an ability to close real estate. 2 minutes about me. I don't know if I'll use all the time, but I've been in real estate since 1981. I've lived in New Jersey basically since the age of 3, when my mom and dad moved from North Carolina, where my dad was stationed in the Marines in Camp Lejeune. And got into real estate 1 year after college, recruited by 2 local brokers who I had involved in a March of Dimes event, sold for 3 years, managed at the age of 25, and a few years later, like 40, we now have 15 offices, 700 agents. We're in northern and central New Jersey. We will transact about $2.4 billion in business this year. And somebody asked me to get involved in 1985 or 86, president of a local board in 96, state of New Jersey in 2004. And then part of a great realtor vice president class in 2005. And a couple of those guys and ladies said, you know, you'd make a decent president. So I threw my hat in the ring, and some people voted for me, and I'm sitting here talking to you on a Friday morning. So that's what happened.
Here we are. Here we are.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a quick session here, and I want to hit on 2 things, the
Sure.
code of ethics and the apology. But first I want to start with the apology. I think that was, just to give some background, I remember when I first met you, it was probably about 3 years ago. We were at a company event, and our regional VP congratulated me on being vice president for GPAR. You got to meet Charlie. He's from New Jersey. It's like, all right. He goes, I think he's going to be the president of NAR. I'm pretty sure he is. And so we met, and we had like a 2-minute conversation, and I knew we were talking about a disruptor to the real estate industry. I won't mention it, but it was the passion, and you were really championing for, if that's a word, for us, to protect the realtors. So when fast forward, you have your inauguration, a few days afterwards, you come out with this apology, which was huge. And just wanted to hear a little bit more about that. Talk about the apology and what led to it.
Sure. To give you a little bit of background, in 2018, President Elizabeth Mendenhall commemorated the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act and we did a lot of things at the national level. NAR hired Brian Green from HUD about 18 months ago as our director of fair housing. And Brian and I spent a lot of time together pre-pandemic, where you could travel to DC and talk about what was happening. And we had some long conversations, and what I asked him is, how do we move forward and focus on housing equality, housing affordability, and making the agenda not historical, but looking forward. And when you look at what NAR expressly prohibited Black members from being part of the National Association for so many years, and all the redlining and all the blockbusting and everything historically that was just so wrong. And if you haven't read the book, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, you should read it, and you won't put it down, and you'll look at the whole housing discrimination a lot differently. So I said to Brian, how do we move forward? He said, well, you have to own what we've done. I said, okay, well, let me come out and say that we're sorry for our actions in the past, but none of us, or most of us, weren't there 50 years plus ago, so we can't know what happened. But we can be part of the solution and beginning a new day, if you will. And there's an old Chinese proverb: when's the best time to plant a tree? 25 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. So when you start to think about how we can move forward, Brian and I talked about a couple of platforms that we would have a chance to be part of. And I said, okay, let's have a discussion, and let's look at the future. And that's when we decided, with me asking, how do we do that? And he said, well, apologize for what you did, but say, okay, it's time to be a new beginning. And to follow that up, we're working on a mentorship and an internship program to help underserved communities, to bring more diverse practitioners into the business, to educate more underserved communities about the opportunities in real estate. We are 20% of the gross domestic product. When you think about what's real estate related, somebody doesn't have to be just a salesperson. They can be in finance, they can be in landscaping, they can be in painting, they can be in so many different parts of our business. And when I think about that, I think about what we can do to educate more kids. Fortunately, I just have a passion for everybody having a fair chance. I look at my kids growing up and playing sports, and kids are kids. The adults cause half the problems with discrimination and everything else. And I think if you have kids that see the future a lot differently, we can be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Agree 100%. Agree 100%.
And we're going to do some great things this year. And Brian, and I'll give you just one last thing. When we started to work on the directorship and mentorship and internship programs, which Mark Gould and the staff at NAR are going to handle, I asked to have a meeting with some of the staff at NAR to discuss what we can do better. I get back an email that we're going to meet on, let's say, November 1st, 2020. And I don't know what the date was. And it was 5 white people. And I said, you know what, Bob, this doesn't work for me. We need the diversity at the staff level to be involved in what we're doing. And it clicked from there. And we had Joe Harris involved, Alicia Bailey involved, Janelle Brevard involved, Brian Green involved, and some of the other VPs. So we had about 10 or 12 people on the call. And the one thing that came out is, home ownership in the white community is, from a generational wealth standpoint, 100 times greater than it is in the Black community. And that's something that has to change. And in 2020, 2019, we saw Hispanic home ownership drastically increased. Well, it's taken a step back in 2020. So we're going to look at all that stuff to make sure housing equality and housing affordability is available to everybody across the board.
That's great. So Brian Green, he's awesome.
Unbelievable. And I don't know if you've
He's
had him
great.
speak to your board, but he's always the smartest guy in the room, which is a problem if there's 2 of us or 100 of us.
Right. No, absolutely. He has been such, Philadelphia, we had some social unrest, and
Yep.
Brian Green was very, very helpful to us. And thanks to NAR, we had a lot of great programs. We had investigative reporter Bill Dedman join us to discuss the Newsday Long Island divide. We partnered with our local chapter of Realtors and we hosted a series of different webinars and workshops focusing on diversity and bettering our industry here. So we are working with also Fred Underwood on a future leadership training. So, and our entire board of directors has the At Home with Diversity certification. We did that this summer. So it's top of list for us here in Philadelphia also. So yeah, that's why that apology was big. So
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so let's go on to the code of ethics. That's a change here. So the online activity, it got pretty hot during this pandemic, and people were very passionate. So let's talk about the change to the code of ethic and what led to this. I mean, I think we kind of know what led to it, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about those changes and if you have any words of wisdoms for our members.
I'm not sure I have words of wisdom, but I will tell you that a couple of things. Number one, anytime you have that kind of passion on any issue, it's good for the association because you do hear both sides of anything. And I always think that to make a good decision, you have to know both sides of a topic. When you look at 10.5 from the Code of Ethics, what we're saying is realtors, can't use hate speech and, against protected classes. What we have to remember, and I'll go over the protected classes in a second, what you have to remember is if something happens, there's still a process after that where a member has to file a grievance, right? It then goes to your grievance committee. If they deem it's a violation, then it goes to through your process. Okay, none of that's been taken away. So just because somebody says you did this, you may not have done that. Certainly with social media and everything else that's out there, I like to think that realtors should be held to a higher standard when you're representing members of the public. That's me personally, and you saw on the vote at the board of directors, it was probably 2/3 that voted that way. Our protected classes under Article 10, and I wrote them all down: race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Okay. And it's just really taking a step forward that says, you know what, we're going to treat people the right way. We've all seen social media blurbs that are just horrific. And I think we just took that and said, we can make sure that we as realtors are held to a higher standard. Just to take this a step further, the Credentials Committee, which vets anybody who wants to run for national office or an elected position, including RVPs and senior office, will also now have a social media review, if you will, that the committee will actually look at the history of the candidates online. I think it's what will be presented to me and to the leadership team, I think, is that they'll go back 3 years just to see what can be looked at. Just like our credit is checked, our financials are checked, our tax returns are checked. We go through a whole process. Excuse me, if you want to be a national officer. So if you want to go and see all the details, you can go to nar.realtor/code of ethics, which will cover everything. But I think it's just raising the bar of professionalism for me. And I think it was a great step forward.
No, I think that was awesome. I think it's necessary too. And you're right. We're professionals and we should act like professionals, and we're out there representing our whole group. So,
yep. And just one thing on that, it always comes back to us. Well, what can you do about licensing to raise the bar on professionalism? NAR can't make recommendations on licensing because real estate licenses are controlled by each state individually. So when we talk about New Jersey requires, I believe it's 75 or 90 hours now to get your license. Another state might have 250 hours. We'd all like to see the bar raised on access to get into our business, but we don't have any say in that on the national level because, again, licensing is controlled by each state.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that because they do come to the local association too, asking the same questions. So it's not something that we can govern. So
and I worked for a boss when I worked for Schlott Realtors. His name was Bob Becker, and he said to me, "Be careful if you put in minimum standards for licensing. You'll be disappointed how many people can reach them." So we talk about putting in standards and minimum standards, and people can get a license. It's can they transact real estate and understand the professional level that it takes to be somebody that represents the public.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a few more minutes,
Yep.
and I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about the lawsuit. About the U.S. Department of Justice lawsuit. I know it's like we need an entire coffee talk on this one. The lawsuit focused on commissions, and maybe we can talk a little bit about if there an agreement. I understand there might be an agreement, and how will this impact our members?
Well, let me just try to clear it up one step. There are two lawsuits, one in Missouri and one in Illinois. Illinois filed against NAR, against Remax, Keller Williams, Realogy, and Berkshire Hathaway. Those are two lawsuits. Separate from that was a Department of Justice investigation that somehow coincided with the lawsuits. We're not sure if there really is a connection, but we all found it very ironic after an investigation by the Department of Justice 10 years ago that all of a sudden it coincides with these two lawsuits. The two lawsuits, at the crux of it, both in Missouri and in Illinois, were about commissions. And that when a seller signs a listing agreement, you've obligated the compensation to a buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent, by you doing that, it is costing the consumer more per transaction. What was being recommended, and obviously, we disagree with the premise of the whole lawsuit. So I think that's real important to understand that we think the real estate industry, and I'm sure all of you as practitioners find it competitive, that you're always trying to do what's best for your consumer. And that hasn't changed, and that the MLS is a positive utility, if you will, to promote real estate equally and fairly for all members and all consumers. The lawsuit questions that and says that if you represent the seller, you should get your fee from the seller. And if you represent a buyer, you should get your fee from the buyer. And by doing that, the consumer will save money versus possibly spending more money. They have zero facts, but that's the premise of the lawsuit. And we have some guesses as to who might be funding it. Understand the two lawsuits have 3 defendants and 11 attorney firms involved. That doesn't seem logical to me, but I'm not a lawyer, I'm a realtor. So the Department of Justice, kind of piggybacked on the same thing in terms of fairness and representing consumers. And it really took looked at, again, the buyer agency side of the transaction. And that the consumer doesn't really understand the way real estate works, and that now we should publish what the compensation is that the buyer's agent will be receiving separately from what you might see in a multiple listing form. So that's where that began. We went 18 months with the Department of Justice, and basically the four things that we agreed to. And again, you can go online and nar.realtor/Department of Justice, and you will see a lot of the details of the discussion at this point. But we're very comfortable with with where we are. We're still waiting for the Department of Justice to file the actual rulings, and then we have 60 days to approve or disapprove the language that came through, and we would have a board of directors meeting to approve it or disapprove it. If we disapprove it, we go right back to the start. Brad Inman, who I'm not necessarily a fan of individually, but reported that it was a great settlement by the Realtor Association with the Department of Justice, and for all intents and purposes eliminates the two lawsuits. I won't go that far, but certainly the Department of Justice, by saying we do business the right way with a little bit of tweaking, should work very, very powerfully for us in the coming months.
Cool. And we can follow along on that link that you will put that in the chat. Yeah.
Katie Johnson and her team do a great job trying to keep us updated. Obviously, with the Department of Justice, it was kept super confidential because of the nature of it, and anybody that would know details could actually have been a witness called by the Department of Justice, which is why it was really 3 or 4 of us that continuously had the discussions. It started at the end of 2019, went through 2020. And of course, my first day as president of NAR is when the Department of Justice filed the rulings. So if you think you had a bad first day at work sometimes, that was my first day.
Welcome. Good job.
You know what? I was part of the process the whole way. And
Yeah.
I look at this as just being part of a leadership team. So my title changed. I had to make, the statements, so on and so forth. But it was a culmination of an 18-month investigation where John, Vince, and myself were part of the discussions with Katie, all the way through.
Well, we're glad you're at the helm. So we're
Thank you.
we're anxious to hear the outcome of that. All right, Charlie, we're at the end of our coffee talk this morning. It was a quick cup, and I'm glad you joined us. We got a lot in this half hour, and good stuff. And I just want to thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if anybody can read the chat room, but I know that you made a challenge early about raising $500, and I put that our company will write a check to whatever that organization is. If you raise 500, we'll match the 500.
Oh, that is so awesome. Thank you so much. That is very kind.
We do a lot in the community. And in fact, I'm going to leave you with one thought. We couldn't have a holiday party this year. Normally, we have about 400 people come to our holiday party out of our 700 or so. We gave each office, our 15 offices, $1,000, and then our company made a $15,000 contribution to the community food bank. I have 3 of the offices that have sent me notes that said, why do we have a holiday party when we can contribute $25,000 or $30,000 every year to people that need it?
That's awesome.
I think 2020 has given a lot of people a new perspective as to what's important. And I'm sure many of you have gone through the same things. We as an association and all of our local boards have done more in the community this year than ever before. And I would just tell you that I hope that that's a trend that stays relevant and prevalent for many years to come, because I do believe we as fabrics of the community make a big difference day in and day out. So thank you all for what you do, and just proud to be a realtor along with you. And even though the Giants and Eagles once in a while have a little battle, I'll leave you with one thought: they both stink.
Yeah, they do. Hey,
so-
we're on a comeback. We're on a comeback.
Oh, no, sorry, Steph, but you're as bad as we are. When the Washington football team is the best team in the division,
Oh, that's awful.
know,
Awful.
we know where we stand, and there's probably a Washington fan here, so they have a better defense than the rest of us. So anyway, enjoy the day. Thanks for having me, and
Okay.
see you all soon, hopefully in person.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for your most generous contribution to our Phil Abundance there.
So
So
you'll let me know.
absolutely.